يحفظك الرب من كل سوء يحفظ الرب نفسك يحفظ الرب ذهابك وإيابك من الآن وإلى الأبد. رفعت عيني إلى الجبال من حيث يأتي عوني معونتي من عند الرب صانع
Good evening, and welcome to Encounter 2021. I raise my eyes toward the mountains. From whence shall come my help? This is the cry of someone waiting, of someone full of expectancy. During this last year, which one of us, feeling helpless and afraid, did not ask this question, at least for one moment? We are starting the journey of this encounter in Jerusalem, a place that reminds us that we are radically needy, that we are all waiting, a place where, at a certain point in history, a man mysteriously claimed to be the true face of all reality. We all need to see this face now, in this dramatic period of our history. And with this need, we begin our days together. Archbishop Pizzaballa, the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, who has been living for 30 years in the Holy Land, will now share with us his experience of 2020.
Good morning, thank you to be with us. Can you tell us something about how 2020 has been experienced in the Holy Land? How the pandemic hit the region last year, and what about the situation now?
Like all the world, we had different waves. The pandemic was, during the pandemic we had ups and downs. You have also to take in consideration that we have different countries, Israel, Palestine, Jordan, Cyprus, the 4 countries of our diocese with different dynamics, of course. But it was terrible for all. Since a year, we have first of all, from the health point of view, a lot of infected people in Israel, Palestine, Jordan, and Cyprus, with at least in Israel 3 lockdowns. We are in the midst of the 3rd lockdown. And also a lot of economical consequences, especially in Palestine and the Bethlehem area, where thousands of people are not working since a year. It is true that the State of Israel organized very well the vaccination campaign, and I think is one of the first countries, not the first country for organization, also for number of vaccines effectuated. But to identify the vaccination with the hope is an exaggeration. Hope is something more deep and larger than vaccination. Vaccination is solid and necessary campaign we need in order to solve a problem. But hope, to put hope only in this aspect, has to say that our life is only here.
How did the pandemic challenge the Christian community, especially in the West Bank?
West Bank situation was very difficult. As I said, in Bethlehem area, we had a lot of economical consequences. In fact, the Christians are not that many, but we didn't have many casualties. In any case, the economical consequences are enormous. And also from the religious point of view, it is the first time ever that we couldn't celebrate Easter, not Christmas, not First Communion, not any pastoral activity. We had intifadas, we had wars, but even with the worst intifada, churches were open and we could have a normal life, Christian normal life. But with this situation, everything is paralyzed, and this was the first time, and this also created a lot of confusion in our people. We are all confused, and also our priests. It is difficult now to reorganize, even because we don't know how, when, what. We are in a way suspended.
Also because your Christian community is used to have a lot of people around, international people. No, it was also first Easter and first Christmas without pilgrims.
Yes, it was a terrible experience because economical consequences, people cannot work and so on. And also a feeling of solitude because just we felt to be very lonely, very just as very few people. On the other side was also nice because we could have the experience to celebrate in intimacy, in family. Usually when there are thousands of people around us, everything is official and the business also enters too much in our activities, while now there is no business, there are no pilgrims, just us, to go to the essential of the feast and less about the external aspects.
You also became sick with COVID-19 last December before Christmas. How did you personally experience it?
The disease is always something that you don't look for, you don't expect. Anyway, it was from the health point of view, I was in the mid, not very serious, not also that light. And the pain and the suffering was something challenging. On the other side, I had time for myself to pray, to think as much as the disease permitted me to think. But I experienced a lot of solidarity. A lot of people wrote and sent messages. And this also helped me to understand the connections and the kind of relations with other people.
And how are you now?
Now I'm better, much better.
Okay, and in the theme of the New York encounter, we have written that we do not want to waste the sorrow we have suffered and the lessons we have learned as if they had been in vain. How did 2020 change you? What is the nature of this change? What was, if there was, new and precious, so that you do not want to lose it?
First of all, I have to say that everyone says that nothing will be as it was before. I'm not that sure. It depends from us. We can go back to the previous life. Of course, there are changes in the infrastructure, in the health system, maybe. But from the personal point of view, human point of view, we can learn the lesson, but we also decide not to learn the lesson. So we have not to give for granted that everything will be as before. We can go to the previous life, or we can have something new. What lesson? From my point of view, first of all, the first consideration I can do is that in a world where we want to put aside suffering, disease, and to identify life with beauty and happiness, this pandemic reminded us in a powerful way, also in a violent way, that suffering and disease are part of the life, are not outside our life. So, and we have to consider this and to reflect on this first. Second, community. We couldn't have gatherings, community life and so on, but we felt that we need community, especially for us Christians. We cannot express our faith fully if not in community. The Eucharist, the sacraments are not just an individual experience, are community experiences. So you need community, and we need to think how to rebuild our communities. And then hope. I understood that we tend to identify optimism with hope, are not the same thing. Optimism is to think that everything will be okay. Hope is to give a meaning, a purpose to what we are living. We had a good experience in this period, despite the pandemic, despite the terrible economical situation with a lot of poor, and taking consideration that we couldn't have a lot of support from abroad because the situation also abroad is not that easy for many communities. Churches are closed, so they cannot gather also the offerings for Holy Land and so on. I saw as bishop a lot of internal solidarity. Not just within the communities. For instance, the communities of Galilee supporting communities in Bethlehem area, or different communities in Jordan, Amman with the poor part of Jordan, especially in south and north. This internal solidarity was not totally new, but in this proportion was new, and is a positive element. Another aspect was in the summer, unfortunately, we saw the disaster of Lebanon. We made collections, all the churches, all the dioceses for Lebanon, and the answer was enthusiastic. I mean, not just us, also the others.
And another aspect of the theme is that the circumstances brought to the surface a deeper, true core of our humanity, expectancy. What are we waiting for? Does the Christian event change the way we wait?
Usually, this expectancy, this attitude of waiting is very important for the Christian faith. Usually, we are waiting for immediately answers, solutions. We want solution for our children, for our fathers, for the work, for the virus, to solve. And we want the Messiah to solve all these situations. This was also the experience of Jesus when people wanted him to make for them miracles and to solve their problems, to free them from their disease, from their viruses. While Jesus came to save us from the deep disease, the sin. All this just to say that we cannot expect from God, from our faith relations, to solve our problems. The faith is to live with serenity, with confidence, with trust in God, our life as it is, even in the sufferings and pain. So our expectancy is not for problems to be solved, but for a company, someone with us that help you to face these situations.
And what does it mean in your daily life as a bishop, as a man?
First of all, this presence in you that helps you to not to solve the problem but to face them, you can perceive in the prayer. First of all, sacraments, in the attitude of listening Word of God, listening to people, circumstances, capability to open the eyes and try to understand what God is saying in all the different circumstances, in every word, something. This attitude of expectancy make you also to be watchful and open. This is what it means for me. So I try to understand, because I also need to give answers to my people. They are waiting. They're also expecting me to give them a word, but I need also to listen to the pain, to the suffering, to the joys of my communities in order to then re-elaborate and to bring back.
Have you a special piece of gospel of Old Testament that you now love more?
Oh, this change from day to day. Now is at the end of the gospel, towards the end of the Gospel of John, when the meeting and the dialogue between Jesus and Peter. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And Jesus said, "You will go where you don't want to go." And but he's also saying that wherever you go, I will be with you.
Since 30 years, you live in a land full of wounds, between nations, between religions, between Christians. You said more than one time in this last month that this is not a moment of great gestures. It is the moment of sowing and waiting for the fruits.
Now, as I said, we are all waiting for big gestures, agreement of peace that will bring and change all the situations. I keep saying, don't wait for this. This, I don't know if it will come. I hope yes, of course. But it will be not tomorrow, not after tomorrow. So it doesn't mean that since this big peace is not coming, we cannot live in peace. We cannot live at all. We cannot just live waiting for something to happen. We have to live the present as it is now, in this situation. How and where? First of all, in the families. To live fully the family life. Communities, in this situation where the individualism is increasing everywhere, here also, where also the communities are wounded by a lot of situations, external, internal, where the conflict also sometimes entering, we need to rebuild the fabric of our communities. And also the relations between the communities. We can have a wonderful relation between Christian family and Muslim family or Jewish families. We can have also wonderful relations between this group and other group. But between communities here is very difficult. To have, if I say to my Christian community or the parish of Bethlehem, we want to meet the community of Muslims or Jews there, they will be scared. So we need to rebuild at this level, first of all, the trust, because this is what we are missing now, is that the trust one to another, as person, family, and community. And the other thing will come. We have groups, wonderful groups, Christian, Muslim, Jews, that meet with a person dedicated to the encounter relations in a land where everything is hatred and division. But we have to bring this from the group to the territory, to the reality, to the ground. So we have to now to meet, let the group to meet with the community, to build the trust little by little. We are at the beginning. There is a lot of things to do, and also to take in consideration that our diocese is very diverse. To do this in Israel, in Palestine, in Jordan is not the same.
And can you give me an example in your life here in the Holy Land?
During my 30 years of presence here, I had the occasion to meet a lot of people, of course. I remember very well the meetings I had with my classmates. I was studying at Hebrew University. My classmates were all Jews, religious Jews. And this helped me a lot. Their questions, their serene, friendly questions about my faith, about my experience of faith, not just what I believe, but how you believe and why you believe in this. Were questions of friends, and these questions changed also my life, because their questions were never my questions. And one thing is when we have to explain the faith. Other thing when we have to share your faith to someone who has a different faith. This is more committing, more demanding also for yourself. Their question becomes your question. So listen, why the resurrection of Jesus? Why Jesus? How this is so significant in your life, and so on. There are a lot of experience, similar experience everywhere here in our land, but they are all personal experiences. Should become something more extended, the fabric of the communities.
What are you looking forward to in the post-pandemic world? Will life ever be the same? Will the Middle East still be the same? How is it possible to be realistic and at the same time to remain positive, open and full of wonder?
Here, especially here in Holy Land, in all Middle East, you cannot not to be realistic. Even if you don't want to be realistic, the reality will enter in your life with violence and powerfully. So there is no alternative here. You have to be realistic. At the same time, the hope and the wonder is not coming from outside, it's coming from your heart. If you preserve in your heart the desire to change, the desire to know, and if you keep in your heart also the wonderful relations that bring you energy, these also will give you the strength to keep hoping against any hope.
And this is also the way to fight the violence that you see here, but also in a lot of our countries.
Yes, there are a lot of violence. Violence is increasing, not just political violence, also normal violence, unfortunately, because when violence become a language, you use this language in all the different aspects and context of your life. But once again, the solution against the violence is from the heart. You have to conquer the heart. You have to keep in your heart the stubborn desire for peace and for encounter.
Welcome back. We want to apologize to any viewers on the Spanish YouTube channel on feed. We believe we fixed that now, so you can check that out. We would like to thank Nahila and Anand Zrik and their group for their beautiful performance of Psalm 121. And a big thank you to Alessandra Buzzetti and Archbishop Pizzaballa. And now we will share a moment of beauty. Beethoven's Piano Sonata, number 26, Opus 81A. And performing for us will be Molly Morkoski, who joins us for the second year in a row to open the encounter. And I hope it's just many more. And with her on stage will be Chris Vath. Chris is also a very talented musician and a composer. And Chris will be sharing some stories and commentary with us to help us get deeper into the music. And without further ado, I present Molly and Chris.
Thank you, John, and good evening. The year is 1809. Beethoven is living in Vienna. 1 year earlier, his friend and patron and student, Archduke Rudolph, who was determined to keep him in Vienna, established an income for the rest of Beethoven's life. So what was happening in Vienna in 1809? Napoleon's army, the French army, was invading Vienna. The aristocrats were fleeing, and among those aristocrats was Beethoven's friend, Rudolph. What does Beethoven decide to do? Of course, write a piano sonata describing the situation. This says, I was thinking about this says something about the man, that the music is a natural extension of him and the world he lives. And so it's natural that he would write a piece. The piece is entitled Les Adieux, Farewell, the Farewell. And it's his only sonata to have a program, to have a story. And the story is the reference to Rudolph's forced evacuation. The first movement is titled The Farewell. The second movement, The Absence. And obviously it's more melancholy and sad. And the third movement is The Return, or the Reunion. And it's a feast of a party for the return of the people who have fled the city. In the opening of the sonata, you hear the uncertainty, the sadness of his friend's departure. Written in the score, and this is very interesting, Beethoven wrote Lebewohl over the first three notes of music. Lebewohl means farewell in German. Let's hear those three notes. These three notes become the motif for the whole first movement. Try to find them as you listen. Listen for them. It's fascinating to see how a composer will take such a small little motif and make something great out of it. Think of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, da-da-da-da, which is used all throughout. But all of a sudden, the mood changes. Bags are being packed. Carriages are often running because everybody's fleeing this city. Let's hear a little excitement in the second theme. At the end of the first movement, the wistfulness of the opening returns, as if to say, this really is farewell. We were consumed with getting out of the city quickly, but now the sad reality of our friend's departure is with us. In the second movement, we feel the mood of loss very strongly. Let's listen to a little example at the beginning. Remember, the second movement is called the absence, so that the whole movement is sad. Don't get confused. It goes directly into the third movement without any pause, But you'll hear the difference in the exuberance of the third movement, which is again entitled The Return. And just before the close of this last movement and the close of the whole piece, there's a little moment of quiet of reflection, perhaps gratitude, which makes you think, oh, I've made this journey from the sadness of seeing them leaving and then coming back, so you're more grateful for the return in the end. Molly was telling me that she had an interesting thought that playing this piece here tonight was a little bit in miniature of what the pandemic has been for us, because something's been taken away from us. And she told me that during this whole year, she's not played for any audience. Not that there's a big audience tonight, but there's a handful of people there, and it's her first time playing in a year. So she's grateful for that experience, and it's something new. So last thing I want to say, remember, let's imagine that you're Beethoven. You're almost 40 years old, you're going deaf, you're almost completely deaf. Beethoven could never find a woman who loved him, so he showers his affection on his nephews, on his friends. He has a lot of friends, one of them being the Archduke Rudolph. But what does his music have to do all of this? Beethoven is considered one of the first composers whose music is considered personal and autobiographical. He's very honest with his music. He's going to put everything out there and let life judge it. I knew a psychiatrist once who thought listening to Beethoven was a great remedy for depression. Why? Because there's a struggle in Beethoven. He's got to fight for things. He fights against the musical structures and conventions of his time. He fights his deafness. He fights his inability to have a fulfilled relationship with a woman. And this struggle requires him giving of himself, a sacrifice. It's clear he's going after big desires, not small desires. Everything in Beethoven is big. It's dramatic because he's throwing his whole self into it. So he, with his big desires, can pull you out of your small desires. I think that's what the psychiatrist was seeing. So let's see when we listen if we can be open. If we can let our hearts be open in order to know something, to burst through what we already know, the oldness that we live. And let's see if Beethoven can communicate to us with music something of who he is, which helps communicate something of who we are. And with that, I turn the stage over to Molly Morkoski.
Almost forgot to do that. Well, we want to thank Molly Morkoski and Chris Vath. Beautiful, Molly. Very beautiful. It was so wonderful to hear live music. Well, folks, we interrupt this encounter for an important message. It really is an important message. His Holiness, Pope Francis, sends cordial greetings to all participating in this year's New York encounter, sponsored by Communion and Liberation. He trusts that these days of reflection and dialogue will foster a shared passion to create a community of belonging and solidarity, Fratelli Tutti, paragraph 36, and in this way promote an authentic culture of encounter, capable of respecting differences, advancing reconciliation and mutual understanding, and inspiring efforts to build a more just and equitable future for all our brothers and sisters in the human family. With these sentiments, His Holiness offers prayerful good wishes for the event and invokes upon those taking part God's blessings of wisdom, joy, and peace. And it's signed Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Secretary of State.